Oh, it lives. Oh,
What's up, old man? Good to see you.
it's great to see you too. It's been God, four plus years now. I finally get to converse with you face to face. I mean, I'm doing this on behalf of a lot of people, but this is huge for us. This is big. This may
Uh,
be this may be just as big as like the July 4th. Like this, so this will go down in 2/8 history.
no, I appreciate big episode, 28th episode. I appreciate you having me on. You know, love me some 28. Hard not to. I'm repping here.
Oh my God, yes. Oh, I don't have any 2/8 merch, but I feel kind of guilty.
I still got T-shirts. I still got T-shirts when I was a lieutenant in 28.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, they got a few holes in them.
Yeah. Do they all just have like? Is it just like the regular insignia, or do they have like any cool stuff or logos on it? Or
Yeah. So when we got back from the march up, the platoon made a shirt that had the combat action ribbon on it. 81s, cross tubes, combat action ribbon. It was really cool.
hell yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, this is great. So I guess because everyone listening pretty much knew you or served under you at one point. What are you doing now? What have you been up to the last 4 years?
So I just finished being the CEO of 11th MU. Great unit. We did some deployments over to Southeast Asia, part of Marine Rotational Force Southeast Asia. My DRC, the Deployment Readiness Coordinator, civilian, Kip Hughes. She's been with 11th MU for a long time, but she used to say, "Hey, 11th MU, 2 number ones." So, but it was a great unit to be a part of. But I'm now up here working in the Pentagon, paying my dues.
There we go, in the big wigs.
yeah, in the Pentagon. So
Mhm.
anyway, I've never been stationed in the Pentagon before, so this is a first for me. Yeah, there's a couple of places I'd avoided. Okinawa was one of them, and hopefully my monitor doesn't watch this. But I've never been to Okinawa, and I've got roughly 12 deployments and an overseas assignment. I did a year in Cuba, but I just never made it to Okinawa, and until now, I've never made it to actually be stationed in the Pentagon.
No, of course. Now, would you ever want to be in Okinawa just from like the things you've heard about Japan, or is it like, does it concern you anymore at this point?
Yeah, no, hey, wherever the Marine Corps needs me to go, I think Okinawa is interesting in that 3MEF, you are basically to steal a line from General Gray Commandant when I came in. At the time he said, "Hey, there's only 3 types of Marines: those that are going to the Middle East, those who are in the Middle East, and those that are coming home from the Middle East." And so we're at the point where I think Indo-PACOM, we're at a point where you're either going there, you're there, or you've been there. So
Yeah.
Priority.
No, yeah, I get it completely. So I think I asked you this prior, but like, what is it like actually working in the Pentagon? Because like when we all hear it, we think of Hollywood, we think of like big secret operations. Maybe there's like a few aliens stored in the basement or something like that. But like, what is it? Like, what's the inside scoop of just like the day to day actually working there?
Yeah, a lot of big projects going on. You got everything going from current what's going on in the world today to guys working programs 10, 15, maybe even longer than that, years out. It's a beehive of activity, and everybody's got things that they're working on, whether it's a service headquarters, whether it's a joint staff, or whether it's Secretary of Defense staff.
Yeah, okay. And you just got there, so I assume like you're either just now starting or you haven't gotten to like work yet on some cool stuff. Has it been just kind of introductory stuff for you?
Yeah, I'm full up working on the joint staff, so I get to see kind of some of the inner workings of how the joint staff supports the chairman and SecDef in carrying out strategic objectives.
There we go. I assume a lot of it's very like for now it's like pretty big ticket. Got to keep a lid on some stuff.
I think they always have things like that going on, and then you've got other stuff you see and hear about in the news. Sometimes that's how we learn what's going on when SecDef comes out and talks. It depends on what your job is, right? You get focused on that, and you lose sight of some other things. But it's long work days. Everybody works. The joke I heard was like, "Hey, you go to the Pentagon, that just means you're going to get coffee for generals." That couldn't be further from the truth. I will tell you that the general officers that I see working in the Pentagon, they work very hard. They earn their pay and they get their own coffee.
Yeah, so like you said, it's a big 2-8 episode, so I am, yeah, I think we're all pretty stoked for that being the 28th. But I should have asked this at the beginning, but why? What makes you love 2-8 so much? Because you don't really hear that too much from a lot of Marines. But why the love and the passion for 2-8?
Yeah, so I'm a double unit with 2-8. So 2-8 was my first unit as an officer, as a lieutenant. We had a great culture there. I had two great commanders, Dan Rogers and Royal Mortensen. They went on to be colonels, expanded their scope and their impact. But 2-8 was the culture. It was just fantastic every time I was there. I enjoyed my time as a battalion commander in 2-8, and I tried to replicate the culture that I had really under Dan Rogers, but specifically under Colonel Royal Mortensen. That man was just fantastic, and he cared about Marines. He very selfless, down to earth, humble, and just created opportunities for Marines and understood, and sailors, right, in the families. And I tried to do the same. That was my role model. Another thing about my time at 2-8 in the march up, we had some heavy hitters. We all loved Royal Mortensen. His XO was a guy named Dale Alford, who is now a retired Major General. Our operations officer was Major Rob Fulford, who's now Major General Fulford. In fact, he's got 1st Marine Division right now. We had a company commander, Jim Ryans, who's now Brigadier General Ryans. We had some serious star power there, literally and figuratively. These guys were just brilliant minds, just fantastic warfighters, great culture, and it just
a real dream team.
Oh, it was a fantastic dream team. Yeah. Really enjoyed my time in 2-8. And when I got command, the list comes out and I got command at 2-8, that guy was just taken back. I just could not believe it. Very humbling, to be handed the keys to the dream thing. And, the interesting thing, so when I took command of 2-8, General Furness had the division. And I think we all remember General Furness. But he said, "Hey, just so you know, I was in 2-8, my first unit," and he pulled me aside and he said, "Don't fuck it up." And all right, sir, got it.
Yeah. Damn. Was it so was 2-8 like the first actual battalion that you commanded? I mean, I know you've commanded like companies and platoons before, but was this like the first real big unit that you've gotten control of?
Selected by a board, yes. There was a period in 2013 where I briefly was battalion commander for 1st Battalion, 9th Marines. But it's a different story, but it was a couple weeks, maybe a month.
Oh, okay. You were kind of like the interim head coach for them a little bit.
Yeah, I was the XO, fleeted up to be the CEO, and then a board selected guy came in. But yeah, so first, really the first time I, special court-martial award authority in a battalion, yes. Probably the one ironic thing is, at the time, the division was doing Task Force Southwest, and they were taking regimental commanders and sending them to be the deputy commander at Task Force Southwest. Well, they pulled 8th Marines to do that. So in a bizarre thing, I ended up being the CO of 8th Marines. I had award authority, or no, not award authority, I had court-martial authority. I owned the flag. It was very bizarre. So I was the CO of 8th Marines, at least on paper, in the seat before I took command of 2-8.
Okay, nice. What was I going to ask about that? Because you mentioned that there was a couple stories that you had from like when you first got to 2-8. There was like the one with the formation, or what was just your first impression when you showed up to 2-8 as a lieutenant?
Yeah, busy unit, right? Getting ready to lock on for Mew. We were going to ITX and Fort AP Hill, and Fort AP Hill was the first thing I remember kind of on the list. And the XO, who's kind of the shepherd for the lieutenants, particularly the new ones. Company XO is like, "All right, guys, we got formation, battalion formation, let's go." We go out, battalion commander comes out, speaks to us. And nobody told me. This is literally my first formation as an officer. Battalion commander gets done talking to us, walks off, and I'm still in formation, like, school circle, right? Sergeant Major comes up. We had a guy named Sergeant Major Larry Rosenfeld, fantastic guy. I always went to him for a lot of advice as a lieutenant. Run into him from time to time in Lejeune on the golf course. But my first kind of introduction to him, speaking of formation, he stands up and says, "All right, listen here, you fuckers. We're getting ready to go to AP Hill. I don't want to hear any bullshit from you. I don't give a fuck if you got one arm. You're going to AP Hill. You'll sling slop into Chow Hall with your good arm." And I'm laughing because I'm like, okay, because at the time you had some requests coming up, like, hey, I can't go for this reason, that reason. He just addressed it flat out. So I look around in formation, like, I probably shouldn't be here. And I look up and I see all the officers had walked off, and I'm the only officer in the formation. So, but Sergeant Major Rosenfeld was, no BS type of guy. So it was always good to hear him speak, but it wasn't appropriate for me to be in that formation. So I excused myself.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
I feel like I hit a couple different rocks there, but like a lot of people, like, I didn't know this about you before. I mean, some people did. I just didn't happen to. But you were enlisted before you became an officer. Like you made it to staff sergeant. Am I right?
I was a staff sergeant. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like, it's crazy to think both sides of the coin and just been in like the Marine Corps ecosystem as a whole. Like, well, yeah, I got like 5 different questions with that, but I'll just go ahead and ask. But like, just what made you go into the Marine Corps in general? I mean, what's why the Marines? Why serve at all? What was your backstory there? Because I know everybody's got one.
So I grew up in a family with two school teachers for parents, right? So they were, I think, pretty dead set on me going to college, and I always had college in mind. But I didn't think I was ready. And my grades were fine, but I thought I lacked the maturity, the discipline that would be required, to be out alone, prioritizing studies, right? When Marines get out, they're like, yeah, I'm going to go to college. I'm nervous. I'm like, dude, you'll be fine because you've got the maturity, the discipline. You know what you have to do in order to succeed, even though you haven't been in a school environment for a while. But for me, the Marines was the only option. I wanted to see if I had what it took to be part of the world's finest fighting force, and get the maturity, the discipline. And, the GI Bill was certainly a draw, and I think it is for all folks. At the time, it was Montgomery GI Bill, which is not nearly as good as the post 9/11. So I stepping into the recruiter's office, it was like, okay, I'm going to do 4 years, get the experience I need, go to college, get a degree. I think education is important. And here I am 35 years later.
Quite a detour, but for the better though.
Yeah, so I loved it. In fact, when I reenlisted, my reenlistment option was Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. I reenlisted for orders to Guantanamo Bay.
Really?
I'd gone down. It's a bizarre story, but I'd gone down there TAD, part of JTF Gitmo. The Haitians were coming over, just fleeing Haiti, trying to get to the U.S., and the current took them right into Guantanamo Bay. So I went down there to help out with that, and Gitmo was, to me, a great place. But it was right about the time A Few Good Men came out too.
What came out?
A Few Good Men, the movie A Few Good Men.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I reenlisted for orders to Gitmo. People think I'm crazy.
No, it's that had to be interesting though, because it's like, what was Gitmo like, for example? Was it, because I imagine like it's a holding bay for a lot of terrorists, but then you said you also have like Haitians coming in, so there's refugees or asylum seekers, I assume, coming in. So it's like, was it multifaceted where you were there? What was that like?
No, so the Haitian thing had kind of died down, and we weren't holding terrorists there yet. And so it's interesting. I was talking to a guy the other day who developed this theory that the Haitian crisis, where we held folks in Guantanamo Bay just to kind of figure out where to go with them. Do we take them to the States? Do we put them somewhere else? Like, what's the right answer here? You think that developed into, this is where we're going to put terrorists. So we hadn't done that yet. In fact, that didn't develop until post 9/11, from everything I understand.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I'm not as old as you are, so you know my history may not be as matched up there. Nobody really asked this, but I'm just really curious because I think it's cool that you came in the so you enlisted in '89, if I have that right, or 1990, something like that.
Yeah, 89. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I don't know if this is the right way to word that question, but I'm just like I think that's cool that like you came in like literally in the late '80s/early '90s. It's like the Soviet Union was on its knees, like drinking and driving laws became a thing, like rap music was on the upbeat. It's like culturally the world was like a different place than like obviously like where my generation is. I'm like, do you ever think about that or just like look back at like what the world was back then when you came in? I think that's cool.
Yeah. So, no cell phones, right? We just didn't have cell phones.
Yeah.
That was, you got to know people a lot better because you didn't have anything like you'd sit and wait in formation. You know how it is. You sit and wait and wait. And that was how you got word, was formation. You didn't get word via text, so you would just sit there and shoot the shit with your buddy while you're waiting for Gunny or First Sergeant or whoever to show up and address the formation. You just got to know people a lot better, face to face. So and we had a lot less gear too. When I checked into my first unit, they would issue you, the Alice pack, the Vietnam body armor. You would go to supply and you would get your shelter half, your E-tool. It would all fit in your Alice pack, your canteens, your war belt, your H harness.
Yeah.
And that was it. You didn't have to go to SIF. You didn't need a pickup truck to take all the stuff they give you at SIF back to your barracks room. You didn't need a working party to help you. Right? So, yeah, definitely interesting. And mail was the key, right? Letters.
Yeah.
We didn't have email back then on ship. So yeah, so all postage.
Yep. Do you think the rise of like the cell phones and I mean, obviously like with that and the internet, like people aren't as close as they are, as back then, but do you think it's for the better though? Like now that you've gotten to, because everybody talks about that, they just like notice it like in the world of like living in general, but like being in the military, like you notice people have it now. Like, do you think it's for the good, for the better? Is it bad? Is it, anywhere in between?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? So it's change, right? We're developing, we're changing as we get new technology. But certainly there's some records of Ukrainians and Russians, getting some incoming as a result of them being on their cell phones. So from a Marine perspective, it's a very real threat to be using that in the battle space. There's a lot of risk associated with it, right? And it's not an easy problem to crack.
No, yeah. So just with anything, like you said, it's change. You just have to learn to adapt to it and address it as it goes.
Not better, not worse. I mean, I think we see the flow of information go a lot faster, right? Like back in the day when the June was commandant, right? It was by letter, maybe telegraph if you're lucky. And now it's email, phone. So the information flow and orders and updates and situational awareness is a lot quicker. And in some cases, that's better.
Yeah, it's just everyone knows everything, like on the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
I like that. So I'm just going to deviate a little bit, but I'm going to try to keep it on like the 2-8 subject. But you mentioned the story, and that's 2-8 lore.
let's come up with a different name. Right.
Okay. Okay. So a certain person went missing in 2-8 that we had to look for. 2019 WTI ITX. We'll call him Harold. We'll just say
Harold. Yes. Yes. So I'll give you my perspective of what happened. I know there's some stuff out there. So it was our first day of liberty, from what I recall. So what we were doing before we went out there, I approached my regimental commander, then Colonel Ryans, and I said, "Hey, sir, I want to treat this like a MEU. We're getting ready to prep for a MEU. I want to get in liberty from Yuma Proving Grounds. We'll set up the logbook, the buddy system, all that, and we'll do an introduction. And we're going to be out there 6-7 weeks. Everybody needs liberties." And he's like, "Yep, makes sense. It's you're training for the deployment. Got it. Yeah, sure." So the first day go out, Liberty expires, and we're missing one. We're missing Harold, right? So somehow, we're trying to figure out, all right, who was the last one to see him? Who was his Liberty buddy? You go back to the log and all that stuff. What I think what Marines don't realize is as soon as like Liberty expires and you lose someone, the staff, me, the XO, Sergeant Major, we go into this mode where we go, all right, who's available to go look for this guy if we have to?
Yeah.
And you start spinning people up to go, okay, let's get this team together who wasn't out on Liberty or who's available to go search places he might have been. You got the platoon sergeants, squad leaders, all that looking for, all right, who's his Liberty buddy? Where did he go? Who last saw him? Whatever. So there's this massive churn that goes on as soon as somebody doesn't come back, right?
Uh-huh.
So we're working through that. And like the company commander brings me Harold's Liberty buddy. And Harold's Liberty buddy, he enjoyed himself. He was shit-faced. And he tells me like, hey, sir, Harold was talking about going to Mexico. Like, I think he left and went to Mexico. I'm like, at what point did you lose him? He's like, I don't know. And just not helpful, right? Like, oh, God. So we start sending teams out. And I didn't know this at the time until after they'd come back. But, Chaplain was one of the ones that we sent out. And what I was informed by the guy that was driving the van for the chaplain was that the chaplain jumped on the grenade to go look at every strip club in the event that Harold was stuck in there.
A real man of God.
Yes. He went to all the houses of ill repute, maybe to cleanse them. I don't know. But so I was like, after Harold came back, that was great. But, so there's some funny things out of this, right? So we get all the Marines up online searching for Harold. Because we're like, his Liberty buddy didn't know if he came back with, his Liberty buddy wasn't helpful, right? So we're going through WTI and it's dark as can be. And, I hear people yelling, Harold, come out here so I can beat your ass, Harold. Like, they were expressing frustration and having to look for this guy. And I certainly understood it.
Yeah.
But Harold was nowhere to be found. So probably like 2:30 in the morning, the medical officer comes up to me and says, hey, sir, we got a hold of Harold. He's on his way here. But, there's we suspect that he might have been roofied. And we think we need to maybe give him a drug test. And I said, look, man, is he safe? Is he okay? He's on his way. Yes, sir. He's taking an Uber. I'm like, okay, good to go. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, if he was roofied, there's only one reason people get roofied, and that's usually for sexual assault. Yeah. So get out your safe kit, your sexual assault forensics examination kit, and let's run him through the drill if we really think he was roofied, because it's not appropriate for a drug test, right? Like, we've got some bigger issues going on. Well, right before Harold shows back up, the medical officer comes to me and says, sir, we sent word to him. He said, yeah, he wasn't roofied. He just got drunk and passed out in an electrical closet in an amusement park.
Yes.
But I'm thinking, I got a sexual assault I got to report. Before we found this kid, I was like, is he in Mexico? Like, I gave Liberty, and he takes off. Is he in a river? Did he make it over it? Like, all these things. You're like, what kind of report is this going to look like? But yeah, he came back. He was fine. So I had a company commander come up to me afterwards it was his day to go on Liberty coming up, right? He's like, hey, sir, I told the guys no libo. And I was like, why? He's like, well, we just had him come back late. And I'm in the mindset of, if we were on a MEU and we had a Marine come back late, mm-hmm. we wouldn't shut down Liberty for everybody. Right. We would shut down Liberty for everybody if we had a big incident, maybe an international incident. We little more like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But not for somebody that just showed up late. And I was like, hey, look, reality, what I'm dealing with here is we got back late. We wouldn't do that on a MEU. And so I can either NJP this guy for being late, doing the shenanigans. Or if I secure Liberty, everybody's going to kick his ass, right? And so I can't secure Liberty for everybody, and NJP him and let have people kick his ass, Like,
Yeah.
like, let's not go overboard. Let's just do liberty and all NJP the guy has appropriate once we get all, like that's kind of where we were at. So liberty did not get secured, much to some folks' surprise, but it made perfect sense to me. Besides, after an incident like that, nobody wants to get in trouble. Nobody wants to get liberty secured. Everybody wants to live, especially like we're training hard working in the desert.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it was a good break. Anytime you're working your butt off and you just get some time off to go relax, it's well worth it.
And you had mentioned that it was, forgive me if this isn't the right word to use, but like, you had to pull a couple strings to get us libo, because you said apparently we were left to ourselves, but the only regimental commander I guess you could get a hold of was ironically somebody you knew that was in 2-8, if I have the story right.
Yeah. So WTI is a bit of a weird beast, So I've got my regimental commander back at Lejeune. You've got the MOTS 1 CO who you are working for. You're in direct support of MOTS 1. You're participating in MOTS 1.
Yeah.
And you've got the CG, Marine Corps Air Ground Combat Center, TTCG, who's, overseeing all of this. So
Yeah.
you've got to keep everybody informed, and you got to say, hey, this is my plan. This is what I'm doing. This is, so yeah, it gets interesting, but this was not anything I needed to report. If he would have not shown up by like 08, right, I would have been making some phone calls and some emails and letting my regimental commander, MOTS 1 CO, and the CG, TTCG, McAxie know. Yeah. So, but we got him back, and Harold's good.
There's so many people that are gonna appreciate this story. I remember because I made a meme post about this like a couple years ago, and it's like I had so many people like, dude, like I completely forgot about that. It's fun. It's funny just hearing it from like your perspective of anybody, because it's like, I mean, you're literally like the king of the behind the curtains of what goes on with stuff like that. So it's interesting, like opening up the veil of how all that works.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think Harold's out now, but that's one of the stories in hindsight that ends up being amusing. That wasn't necessarily amusing at the time.
No. Oh man, is there and maybe that might be the only one, but were there any other like funny stories like that you had being just like the 2-8 BC, like during that period? Like, was there stuff on the Mew that may have happened that you had to deal with, maybe that was in hindsight that was just a shit show, but when you look back on it, it's kind of funny? Or
I don't, so I'd have to sit really hard and think about it.
Yeah.
There's something I could tell you offline about a case, an NJP that I didn't entertain that would be, a good behind the scenes, because the individual.
Yeah.
That I refused to NJP. I didn't refuse. I just threw it out. It didn't make sense to me.
The only one I can think of, because I remember on the Baton it was a big deal. I don't know how it was in the other ships, but do you remember there was an incident where at one point we thought we had someone who had COVID, like during the whole craze of March, April 2020? Like everyone was going, like we had guys from LAR and HNS, they were throwing on their gas mask while we're cleaning the bear. We're cleaning the
yeah, that was interesting. Wearing masks when nobody had gone anywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were self-contained at sea for a long time, and yeah, but they didn't have the testing available, I think, until the tail end of the deployment, and then even then, it wasn't a robust testing program.
Oh, yeah, that you mention it, yeah, I think I remember that, because wasn't there at that time you had to get like 2 or 3 tests to even confirm if you had COVID or not, or something like that?
That wasn't a terribly reliable test. We didn't have a lot of them, from what I recall.
Yeah, I completely forgot. Yeah, being like the very beginning of COVID, I forgot about that. That's being now that I think of it, I mean, was it, when you look back on that, like you were a leader during like the COVID time frame, like what do you think about that whole era of the COVID era, being a Marine?
Yeah, so Yeah, look, I know it's tough, right? You cooped up on ship. You got to get creative with training, right? So we put out some objectives, right? Everybody green belt or higher, and there's some danger there because we like to beat the hell out of each other, and we tend to break things, right? When you start doing the map, wanted everybody corporal's course qualified, right? I mean, it's good PME even if you're not going to stay in. So we had some things that we were getting after that helped achieve the goals, and we came out with, I think 98% of the battalion was green belt or above.
Okay.
Yeah, it was insane. And I know you guys were doing a lot on the big deck. But I would go down to the mess decks every day, either lunch or dinner, sometimes both. And, you know, you had, for us on the New York, you had a green line and a blue line, right? So Marines had one side, Navy had the other. But I would stand on the Marine side and just, you know, look in people's eyes, ask them how they're doing, what's going on. And that I would spend, you know, most of the lunch or dinner period in line, just as people walk by me, how's it going, right? And so I just wanted to keep my finger on the pulse of how we were doing in that environment, right?
Yeah.
So it's frustrating. You can't control it. It's not what you want. So for a frame of reference, when I was a Lance Corporal, my first deployment was Desert Shield, Desert Storm. And I was on the USS Nassau. And it's a decommissioned now, but it's LHA. And I was on there. I amassed 8 months of sea time, and we hit 3 Liberty ports the entire time.
Yeah.
So 8-month period, three Liberty ports. And, you know, so I knew what it was like to kind of be a hostage on a ship, so to speak.
Yep.
You know, so to me, it was back to the future, so to speak. Go back to my days as a Lance Corporal stuck on the Nassau. You know, we were holding 7 Iraqi divisions, I think it was, on the coast of Iraq. So that you know, the second and first Mardiv could go into Kuwait, but yeah, it was just a flashback for me.
Yeah, and that was I might have misheard it. The first or the second Iraq War that happened? That was the second one.
That was Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
Oh, okay. All right, first one.
Yeah,
and you okay. Did you have, because I'll just bounce off it, but you mentioned that one of the you had 2 stories of combat that you quote unquote said made me scared shitless. Was one of them in that one? Because I remember you telling me about it. I'm just trying to piece it together when it happened.
Yeah, but so both of them march up, right? The two independent. We're so the just to probably oversimplify this. After Desert Shield, Desert Storm, the Kuwaitis just put a minefield down, and we started in Kuwait. We had to go through the minefield. They had breached very specific spots for vehicles to go through, and you know, there's this massive line, and it was clear that hundreds of vehicles had gone before us, and they'd given us very specific instructions. And he said, look, whatever you do not drive out of the lane that's proofed. Stay in the tracks of the vehicle in front of you, because nothing else has been cleared of mines. If you veer out, you run the risk of being the first casualty.
Yeah.
Well, my driver, it's well worn, sand is soft, he's worried he's going to get stuck, and he veers off the lane. And I was scared shitless that we were going to hit a mine, and we hadn't even started. I didn't want to be the first casualty.
Yeah.
81's platoon commander killed crossing the breach.
Yeah.
So I'm beating on, get back in the lane, stay in the tracks. You know, and then a couple days later, a week or so later, the night of the main, where H&S reinforced the XO and his team. You know, at that time, Major Alford and his team came under attack by Fayadeen, and they took some friendly fire from LAR. We were oriented, you know, let's just say, I want to say we were oriented east, and we basically had to shoot southwest. You know, so I had a mortar platoon. We had been rehearsing shooting 360 degrees, right? So you got to put stakes in the front, and you got to put stakes behind you.
Yeah.
Not so much back stakes to you refer your deflection to 0700. Okay. But you pick up the tube and you reorient them, and that becomes your new 2.8, right? 2.800. So we'd had the boards, the data, everything set up for it, but you can't do that in training. So, combat, you need the ability to fire 360 degrees. And for those that didn't learn it in Iraq, they learned it in Afghanistan, right? You see a mortar on a fob and it's ready to fire in any direction in Afghanistan. But so we go from where we had been shooting, almost 180 degrees, turn the tube around, get up on the new stakes, and we have the data. We're shooting backwards in support. The XO, Major Alfred, says, I need an FPF. I need you to fire an FPF.
God bless.
We hadn't registered an FPF. We hadn't shot in that direction. We hadn't shot off those stakes. Mathematically, it works out. But when those rounds went out, I was scared shitless that we were going to kill our own.
Yeah, I would be too. God bless. I mean, it didn't happen, obviously, I'd assume.
No. So I was scared. I heard we had casualties, and I'm thinking, God, that better not be us, right? And so the next morning, Major Alfred comes up 281s, and I don't know where he got this, but somehow he got Copenhagen and cartons of cigarettes. And he hands them to me, and he's like, hey, thanks, you saved my ass last night. And I told him, I was like, hey, sir, first lieutenant to Battalion XO, I say, hey, sir, I was scared shitless that we would have caused some of those casualties. And he's like, no, you guys were on the money. You did exactly what we needed to do. You saved us.
God bless. That's motivating right there.
Yeah. Well, motivated. But I'll tell you what, I felt a huge sigh of relief because I was worried that our rounds would have caused some casualties in our battalion. And interesting. Go ahead.
I was gonna ask, did you sleep that night? Like after all the rounds were expounded, or?
I might have slept for a couple hours. I mean, so this attack happened at night too.
Yeah.
Right. So, you got to make sure you got NADs. And for people that aren't mortarmen or don't know, NADs are not gonads; they're night aiming devices.
Yeah.
Right. So, orange and green, if I remember correctly. Here, been a while, but.
Yeah. No, your job knowledge is still on point. You're good. Yeah.
So, but another interesting thing is we broke 2 base plates in combat.
Really?
Firing. Yeah. The mortar team fired a lot. Some of it was firing, and some of it was but probably the ground we were on, even though the plates had been sunk and we'd been shooting there for days. Yeah. But it was near simultaneous. We broke 2 base plates. And it just so happened, like you talk about luck of the Irish. Before we deployed for OIF-1, March Up, I'd happened to be visiting LAR mortars, and I just wanted to understand how they worked, and because if you don't go through the schoolhouse, which I didn't, right? I'm not a 41. I didn't go. I went through Army Fort Benning. Infantry mortar leaders course. So I didn't have an exposure to LAR mortars. So I went out there and they're shooting off of, in the truck off their bipods. They're Lazy Susan mortars. And, they're showing me everything they got. And they're like, yeah, we got base plates back here in case we need the ground mount, but we don't like to do that. And so when we broke our base plates, I went over to the suppo and said, hey, man, between you and the 3 Alpha, I need you to help figure out, is there an LAR mortar unit around here? Because I need to get their base plates. I just broke 2. It just so happened a couple miles away was an LAR unit, mortar unit, and they gave us 2 base plates. So we got right back in the action. Yeah. And so I was worried about it. At one point, Battalion Commander was like, hey, what do you need? I'm like, well, I need 2 base plates. He's like, well, you got 8. I'm like, yeah, but 2 were borrowed from LAR. Colonel Mortensen was fantastic. He's like, well, just don't give them back.
Did they ever get them back?
I think we gave them back to him in the June because it was second LAR.
Oh, okay. Yeah, probably. Yeah, they probably have to at that point.
Yeah.
So I'm just out of personal curiosity. So, obviously, being 81s, I assume all of your combat was very indirect. Did you ever get up and close with Iraqis and the Mujahideen while you were in Iraq?
Man, that's a great question. So I want to say it was 24 March. We're in Nasiriyah, and the Fayadeen, we see this mass exodus of civilians coming our way. At the time, when when you don't have the understanding, this is new to you, right? What it turned out to be was they were leaving because they knew we were about to get attacked. So I got 81s online. We're prepared to shoot for the battalion, but from our flank, and I've got Gulf Company co-located with me, but on our flank, we start taking fire. And almost to a man, my mortarmen abandoned their guns to go shoot direct fire at these guys that were shooting at us.
Yeah.
Maybe not that bad. There were a handful of folks still left. Like, there was like one guy on each gun. I might be exaggerating a little bit, but a lot of folks picked up, a lot of mortarmen picked up and started shooting 5.56. And I was dragging guys back. I'm like, guys, get on your guns. Let's hit them with 81s. This will end the fight very quickly.
Yeah.
I don't need you getting in a direct firefight. Let's use the guns.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, no pun intended, but we literally are the heavy artillery in this one. When are we?
yeah. So, but you know, the Marines just wanted to go shoot stuff, right? And I think you can edit this out later if you want, but I think one of the things that 81s needs to do, and you know, is like anytime you go to a range, you know, especially if you start to dig like a stage 3 mortar pit, right? Like put 5.56 in the mix and let's do a defense for folks. You know, you got an assault on your mortar position. You're going to shoot 5.56. Let's take advantage of the stage 3 pits we're digging and let's shoot 5.56 into the impact range that's cleared up to what, 155.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we don't do enough of that, in my opinion.
No, yeah, and I asked about that originally because not to flip it on me, but I had an Uber driver last year who was an Iraqi, but he was in the Iraqi army during that war. And I kept thinking in the back of my mind, like, dude, it's crazy that maybe at one point, like, you or him could have been like face to face with each other. And to me, that was like, this was my chance to clear it up. Probably never happened, but it's just, I had to ask.
Yeah, we took some indirect, but nothing significant. Not even close to compared to what we put on them.
No, yeah, I can imagine. So I'll just try to shift to the War on Terror, I guess, with that being so you were in before, during, and after the War on Terror, which I think is probably like cool just to see that like you got to witness it from its like inception, and then now, I mean we're kind of in the Middle East, I guess you would say, but we're not like in it, as you would say, I guess. Just like, what do you think? Like, it's like, what are just your thoughts on it overall now that it's done and now that we can look back on it in retrospect?
Yeah, so we're fighting terrorists before the War on Terror. We're going to continue to fight terrorists. The War on Terror really, you know, I think is a statement against the attack on us and the terrorist groups behind it. Mm-hmm. But for me, you know, what I really saw was an acceleration of our equipment and training and education. You know, before 9/11, you know, when I went out on a MEU, right, we were issued a pistol. Officers, I want to say staff NCOs and officers were issued pistols. You know, not terribly realistic. And we learned that in the march up. We learned that in Afghanistan, right? If you're going out, you're going patrolling, you're taking 5.56. You're taking M4, M16A2, M16A4, right? So the A2s went out fairly quickly, but, you know, iron sights. I remember qualifying as a second lieutenant on iron sights. We don't have it. We have ACOGs now, scopes, right?
Yeah.
So when I came back as a company commander, just all the gear we had maybe 7 NVGs. I think they were 7 Deltas. You know, if you had a PVS 14, you were lucky, right? And then I come back as a company commander, and we've got all kinds of gear, right? So we're really an acceleration in that equipment getting there, at least to the tactical units is what I saw.
Okay. Yeah, I noticed you, because the way you said it, it was like an acceleration. It's almost like, would you say that we evolved into that or adapted into that situation, whatever it was? Because it seems like people, I know like enlisted always talked about this. You could probably shed a little more light on it since you're more educated, but it seems like every new war the U.S. gets involved in, there's like this period where we fight from like whatever the previous war was, we struggle, and then we adapt into like the new way of fighting. Was it the same way with the War on Terror, would you say?
I don't know if tactically on the ground, you know, it was that, because, you know, when you look at Taliban interactions in Afghanistan, you know, especially early on, like 1-6 in their MEU, it was conventional fighting on the ground.
Yeah.
We certainly had to learn a lot about IEDs.
Oh yeah.
And that's just a brutal. But I think there's always learning, right? If you don't learn in combat, you're probably going to die.
Mm-hmm.
So they say grunts are dumb, but you can't be a dumb grunt and live long in combat.
That's a good one-liner. I like that.
Yeah, and so, but no, I mean, I'll tell you what, I am absolutely impressed with where we stand today and who we've got in. People can badmouth it all they want. Come and serve with them. These are fantastic young Americans ready to go kill people that threaten our way of life, and
Yes,
that's
sir.
what the nation has called us to do, and that's what they have signed up to do.
So what do you think? So now that the war on terrors, for the most part, the book's been closed on it, and now we have like 2030 coming in. Since you're a full-blown colonel, it makes sense to ask you of all people. But what do you think is going to be the next conflict or like the next stage of? Because we're dealing with like cybersecurity. There's like drone warfare, like with Ukraine and Russia. Like people talk about China. Some people entertain like civil stuff going on here. But like, what do you think's the next like era of war, like phase that we'll probably be going into?
Yeah, so let's just study Russia, Ukraine for a while and see some of what they're doing over there, right? The drone stuff on both sides is fascinating to me.
Yeah.
The cell location, right? Even some of the information operations that they're doing, right? Like, I read a story about Ukraine posting the web, like, come find your Russian soldier, we've got him, and putting pictures.
God.
So there's some interesting stuff, right? And there were articles written years ago about fourth generation warfare that kind of were really prescient and have come about. And there's some articles a little bit, maybe written 20 years ago. I may be off, but fifth generation. And it's a lot of it's really coming to fruition. Now,
Yeah.
I will tell you, aside from probably Pete Ellis, who kind of laid out the amphibious plan for World War II well ahead of his time, right? Aside from Pete Ellis, we're not terribly good at forecasting the next war as an institution. So, I think being prepared, staying ready. Readiness is tough, right? We're spending a lot of money to get planes and everything fixed. So just maintaining that sharp edge and being ready when the nation needs us, and continuing to evolve tactics as technology increases.
I like that. Do you think what do you think about the AI stuff coming out? Do you ever worry that there's going to be like a fake Colonel Siverts, like mirage of AI telling people what to do in the future?
I'm not worried about it. I don't think anybody produced AI on me. But to me, that's kind of white noise, right? At the essence, this is a people organization. You need good information to make decisions. We cultivate experience. We want the 5,000-year-old mind. I don't know how much AI is going to help us make these decisions. You get a lot of experience, whether it's through reading or through actually doing things. You get that fingertip feel. You get the gut. And I don't think that AI can replace that. We'll see what additional information it can bring, but human needs to always be in the loop.
No, yeah, 100%. There's still a lot of I don't know. It's like the new craze, so I try to look at it and study it, and ask people. And there's still like it's a technology that's like going to be studied and probably useful, but it's still got like a long way to go before it, especially with military use, probably like take over us or anything like that.
I think there's some great applications for it. I just, I'm interested to see how it evolves with respect to helping commanders make decisions. I'm not convinced that I'm not there yet.
Yeah. No, yeah, I see what you're saying. Oh yeah. So I think 9/11, did I ask you about that? Where were you or maybe I asked you on the phone call, but what were you doing on 9/11 when that came out?
Yeah. So I was on a MEU. We were on 24th MEU med float. It was a great med float. We'd actually, as I recall, I may be a little fuzzy, but as I recall, we were doing our first day of training in Livorno, Italy. a little bit of a funny story. My guys, I was platoon commander. I had weapons platoon. We were doing land nav, just kind of started, and I'm running through the woods, checking boxes, helping land nav. Because quite frankly, I just as a side note, the TBS land nav package that we went through, fantastic. I don't know if you could get much better land nav training anywhere, but they give you a lot of tools, and so you want to help your Marines. I'm running around doing that, and then Company Gunny comes up, pulls up in this Humvee, and it's like, "Hey, sir, just so you know, we're under attack." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He's like, "Yeah, they just flew 2 airplanes into the Twin Towers. The Twin Towers are crumbling. Like, we think terrorists did it." And I'm like, "We're out here, like, cell phones aren't a thing, right?"
Yeah.
This is 2001. Internet almost always requires a hard line. Wi-Fi doesn't really exist, not that I can remember. But I'm like, "Do you have a shortwave radio? Like, what are you listening to Radio Free Europe? Like, what's going on?" He's like, "Oh no, I ran over main side, went to Burger King, and while I was getting a sandwich, I was watching the news." I was like, "Only Company Gunny, right?"
Yeah.
I was like, "Well, did you bring me anything?" But so, we were just like, "Are you kidding me?" And not long after, the call came down for us to backload, get back on ship, and we got back on ship. And as I recall, that same day we were back out at sea. We were probably being in position to do whatever the nation needed us.
Oh,
we had some rumors floating around. We're going to go to Afghanistan. We were on the tail end of our deployment, and we were like, "All right, let's get extended. Let's go. Let's go." And it didn't happen. We returned. So we were probably the last great mid float.
Oh, okay. So you were only in Italy for like a day, not even at most. Like, did you get to enjoy like the pasta, the Catholic, tradition of stuff going on? Did you get to enjoy?
We did plenty of liberty in Italy.
Okay, there we go.
Rome, Gaeta, plenty of liberty, but that was before that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I guess we've talked about a lot of big ticket stuff, but mostly like you being an officer, but just like, what do you look back on like your career being an enlisted Marine? Because it's everybody has this view of like you being a colonel, being an officer, but like, what's your I guess how did like being an enlisted guy like shape you into being like the officer you are now, or just your perspective on things? Like, do you ever look at the world still through the eyes of the the eyes of someone with a rocker?
Yeah. So having been both, right? Like just instant takeaway. Enlisted was more fun. Officer more rewarding, right? So the things you do as an officer, a little bit longer burn. It is absolutely rewarding for me. Like, I love signing promotion warrants, right? Love putting medals on Marines' chest, deserving Marines and sailors, right? That was probably one of my favorite things to do as a commander, because you only have award authority when you're a commander. But hey, Marine kicking butt, and just go down and pin a Navy Achievement Medal on them because you can, right? They deserve it, and we'll write the citation later. But here's an impact NAM. I just absolutely love that stuff. So the authorities that go with it, right? But I will tell you, I think the best rank in the Marine Corps is sergeant, hands down. Sergeant's just where it's at, right? So you're in the trenches, but you're also talking to the staff NCOs, the officers.
Yeah.
Ground truth. You are the strongest part of the backbone of the Corps, bar none, right? Sergeant's God. And every Marine that comes in should, if they don't aspire to be a sergeant, I don't know what's wrong with them. But sergeant's where it's at. I think I was never a gunny. I made it to staff sergeant, but I was never gunny. But I think gunny is the second best rank in the Marine Corps. I know just folks will fight me on that. They think gunny's the best, but I've got my own opinion. That's all that matters.
What makes because like I never really thought what would be like the next one after sergeant, but what makes gunny up close? Like, what makes that one high ranking?
Yeah, just to be the gunny, right? Gunny can like go anywhere they want, do whatever they want. I mean, within reason, right? But as a young guy, gunny's just making things happen and talking to more senior folks and just laying out God's truth, right? At the same time, probably the most dangerous thing you would ever hear, particularly as an officer, is a gunny say, "Hey, sir, watch this shit," because you never know what's going to happen.
I love that.
But there's a lot of respect to the rank of gunnery sergeant. Big deal.
Yeah, there's a not like an aura, but like they have like a reputation almost, just like from the rank itself.
Yeah, I'm not a good enough linguist, I think, to capture why, but that's just sergeant's the best, gunny's the second best.
No, but I mean, yeah, I'm not, as you heard from me, I'm not too articulate myself, but we all know the picture. I think we all have the same one in mind.
Yeah.
And what do you think? There's probably a couple different ways to say it, but everybody's a Lance Corporal at heart. Do you think that's true? And how would you interpret that when people say that?
I don't know about at heart, but I think everybody's kind of got the ability to be a Lance Corporal, right? No responsibility. You're just kind of responsible for yourself, right? So, for officers, we got, there's that saying that get everybody the same rank, one rank in a room, they're all going to act like Lance Corporals, right? But there's also something, so after 2-8, I went to the Naval War College, right? Mm-hmm. And I joked around, all the students there, we were in Lance Corporal mode because you're responsible for yourself and that's it. And sometimes it's nice to just be responsible for yourself. And, when you got a battalion of at one point we were almost 1,550 Marines in 2-8.
Really?
Yeah. We had swelled up so bad. I don't know if you remember the new join program that we did where we kept new guys at the battalion for 2 weeks, put them through combat lifesaver, put them through gray belts, show them how to get their gear, all that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Well, so that was a method for me. My first month in command, I had like 10 guys who failure to adapt, right? And when I talked to them, like, it's basically they just quit on the Marine Corps. It's probably an oversimplification, but, I interviewed them like, hey, why should I sign this paperwork, right? Like you joined the Marine Corps, you raised your right hand, you went through boot camp, you got the Eagle, Globe, and Anchor. You cried during that. I know you did. Everybody does. Right? Yeah. So, like, what happened, right? So this just isn't for me. This isn't how I thought it would be. I didn't have a solution for it, right? But I had to do something different. And so, anyway, we kept stats, right? How many people went through the new join program, got discharged? How many went through the new join program, got NJP? All that stuff, right? We saw a drastic reduction in administrative separations, in NJPs, and just problems in general.
Really?
Through the new join program. Now, was it correlated or not? Like, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, right? And we don't know, but we were trying to measure it.
Yeah.
So, but it was largely effective for us.
Yeah,
it worked.
And if I could, dig in a little bit on that, why do you think that is? Because you said that like it seems like some people tend to quit on the Marine Corps like when they get in, and I noticed a little bit of that too because people will make like especially enlisted, they'll make fun of people who are like motivated or something, or they'll put them in their own category of their own, and a lot of people just and I don't know how it's been through you, like throughout each stage of your time in, but they just get out after their 4 years or something like that. But why do you think that is, if you don't mind me digging in?
Yeah, it all depends, right? We haven't talked about the barracks, but, you get into the barracks, and if you're a guy that just isn't performing or, you're like uber motivated, I know what happens in the barracks, having lived there for 6-7 years. Mm-hmm. Particularly in an infantry battalion, right? People come out and start messing with them, and that can make life completely unenjoyable, right? And then you just get to a point where you don't have anybody to turn to, and you just want to quit, right? So the idea of our new joint program, but the reason we swelled to 550 was division liked what we were doing and kept giving us people. Mm-hmm. And it got to the point where we were living in 3 or 4 different barracks, and I was like, G1, I knew him, Colonel Aldridge. I was like, hey, buddy, I don't give me anybody else. I can't take them. Like I'm calling other units to get barrack space. Yeah. So we had swelled up. Part of the reason was the new joint program we were doing. But right when I got to 2-8, we had 2 Marines from COM who were down in South Carolina on leave, and they were in a bar. This is shock, Marines in a bar. But a guy got shot, and they were combat lifesavers. They applied first aid until the ambulance showed up, but they were credited with saving this guy's life. So I was like, all right, look, let's give these new Marines a skill they can use anywhere, the field, out in town, whatever, life skill, but certainly important for us as casualties, and certainly in my experience in combat. And then what I didn't want was hazing, right? I mean, I understand it happens, and I'm going to do everything I can to root it out, right? Hazing is not a training standard. If it was, it'd be in the training manual, training and readiness manual. But so if I could put this young Marine through gray belt, toughen them up, get your hands on someone else, right? And I went through brown belt on ship, on deployment, by the way.
Okay.
So, yeah. Those guys beat the shit out of me too. I think they took advantage of the fact that I was there. I had bruises all over my chin. But anyway, get tough, get physically and mentally tough, through some gray belt techniques. That was kind of the goal there. And then, all right, we drop you off at your platoon, and you got your gear together. You know how to use it. You know what's what. You know what everything's for. No one has to walk you around and show you. I don't need to pull the team leader or somebody else out of your platoon to show this Marine around, go to SIF, whatever, right? You just get a ready to go Marine. Now, it took 2 weeks longer than you wanted, but you also had all the folks there you needed during those 2 weeks, minus this guy. Right?
No, 100%, yeah.
So, the sergeants gave me a little bit of pushback. I had a sergeant's council on it. And they're like, sir, we don't need a battalion doing this. And I'm like, look, I got it. Just give me one shot at it, because I'm not going to continue to sign failure to adapt, right? Just do me a favor, support me once. If it is garbage, we'll call it garbage and I'll stop it. But I got to do something different. They were like, all right, sir, fine. We'll give you one. We'll support you on one. Right. Yeah. So I get the sergeant's council, right? General Furness was doing it at division. So I was like, all right, whatever he's doing, I'm doing. So I got the sergeants back together after a month or so after we ran our first iteration. Sergeant stood up and said, hey, sir, I got this guy. We were at the infantry immersion trainer. We took a cherry picker. And while I was setting up security, this kid not only treated the cherry picker, he gave me the missed in the 9 line when I walked back after setting security. He's like, so I'm all for it. So we just kept going. Yeah. So,
I like that.
But that's why we swelled. But so anyway, back to the story at hand is Lance Corporal, how this all ties in. Is, after having 1,500 plus Muldoons at one point in the battalion, not getting phone calls for a year in Rhode Island, it's good to be a Lance Corporal sometimes.
Would you almost say it's like this is just me kind of piecing off the top of my head, but like being a teenager or like being like a young adult, like in the real world, you have all this youth, all this confidence, all this potential, like this, like energy to just tackle the world, but like in the Marine Corps, that's kind of like what makes a Lance Corporal nonetheless.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Lance Corporals are great. We don't win wars without them, right? Locate, close with, motivation. And the corporal, when I'm in the CO billet, I'm not there for me. I'm there for the Marines and sailors and families that I'm leading. And that corporal's there to lead those Lance Corporals or that Lance Corporal and those PFCs. And as tasks trickle down, you gotta have folks that execute.
So what was life like for a Lance Corporal Thomas M. Siverts? What was Lance Corporal Siverts like back in the day?
Yeah, I was probably on the motivated side. So back in the day, we didn't have digital camis. We had those tricolor woodlands. You had to iron them. You had to iron and starch them, or if you had to take them to the cleaner. Nobody can, we couldn't afford taking them to the cleaner. So, iron and starch. We had black boots. You had to polish your boots or spit shine them. I think they still spit shine the dress shoes, the service shoes.
The core frames.
No, do you guys get to shoot core frames in boot camp?
Yeah, at least I was. But I'd imagine it's still the same. No.
Nah, we got issued leather and we had to spit shine them. And then once we realized, after you graduate, we realized there were core frames out there. We went and bought them. But yeah, I was on the motivated side. I ended up being a meritorious corporal. I probably shouldn't have been, just as I look back, but a little bit over 2 years in the Marine Corps, I won a meritorious corporal board. So I should have been a Lance Corporal probably longer than I was. Yeah.
I think a lot of people would benefit or know from this story, but you mentioned there was a story of when, because originally, not a lot of people know this one, but you started out as an admin guy, if I'm not mistaken, right? And there was a story of you getting an offer.
Becoming broken and unreadable.
Oh, man. Yeah, there was a story of you got an offer to go to Desert Storm and kind of like flip it around a little bit. And I personally loved it, just like the wisdom that you were able to crack over there. Do you mind sharing that story?
Yeah. So I as far as I recall, I came in open contract. I didn't know anything about the Marine Corps. I didn't have parents in the Marine Corps. Grandfather was in the Army Air Corps in World War II. But, as far as I know, I'm the first Marine in my family. Mm-hmm. So I just got out of the recruiter, said I want to be a Marine, right? And so I didn't know, boot camp, they tell you what MOS you get. And unless you come from a Marine family and you understand this, I don't think, I don't think the rest of us who just don't have that, we don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, they read out, I'm going to be admin. And I was like, what? Okay. So I go to admin school, I graduate, and I go to Norfolk, and I'm working at FMF Land. Well, I'm the TAD clerk for Fleet Marine Force Atlantic. Our boss is a 3-star. Down the road, a couple miles, is a unit called 4th Marine Expeditionary Brigade. It was stationed in Little Creek, Virginia. Saddam invades Kuwait, and 4th Marine Expeditionary Brigade puts in a request for augments to their staff, and it comes through me as the TAD clerk because I got to write orders for these folks once they put a name with them. And I see that they need a Lance Corporal 0151. And I'm like, I'm a Lance Corporal 0151. There's no more 0151s, by the way. They're all 0111s today.
Okay.
But back in the day, you had 0121, 0131, and 0151 as your admin guys that they've now lumped into 0111. So I go to my gunny and say, hey, I want to deploy. They're going to combat. I joined. Let's put my name on this. Can I write my own orders? Right? I'm the TAD clerk. I write orders. Can I write my own orders?
Yes.
So Gunny says, you need to go ask the colonel, the G1, the full bird. Yeah. I'm like, okay, where's the colonel? And like, he's upstairs. Okay. So I just barge in and I'm like half a step into the colonel's office and I feel this snatching on my collar and the master guns who I just didn't pay any attention to because I just want to ask this colonel to deploy.
Yeah.
He snatches me by the collar and he goes, what are you doing, boy? I'm like, Master Guns, I got this sheet here that says they need an 0151. I asked Gunny, she said, I got to ask the colonel. And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, look, 4th Med needs a guy. I want to go. I'm the right rank, right MOS. She said I had to ask the colonel. I'm going to ask the colonel. Yeah. He goes, hold on just a minute. He goes into the colonel's office, shuts the door. And I don't know what conversation they had, but I suspect it was like, hey, sir, do you need to approve the TAD clerk going TAD for 4th Med? Like, does he need to ask you? Whatever. So anyway, Master Guns comes out and like, go ahead, go in. And I walk in. I'm like, sir, my name's Lance Corporal Siverts. I'm the TAD clerk downstairs. I work for you. But I got a request for an 0151 Lance Corporal. I am an 0151 Lance Corporal, and I joined the Marine Corps to deploy to war. And they need somebody. I want to go. And he goes, he puts down his glasses and he goes, are you an only son? No, sir. Are you sole surviving son in your family? No, sir. Do you have siblings? Yes, sir. I have a brother. He goes, you sure you want to go? Absolutely, sir. He goes, okay, you can go. You're dismissed. Thank you, sir.
Oh,
so
man.
I get over to 4th Mem and they go, hey, we don't need an 0151. We need a MAGTAF planner. And I'm like, I'll be whatever you want me to be. I just want to be here. Right. So I end up being a MAGTAF planner, which has become the 0511 MOS.
Okay.
So I was in an MOS that wasn't mine. I ended up moving into MAGTF planner a couple years later.
Hmm.
So started out 0151, became a MAGTF planner, and then went to the dark side.
There we go. Oh,
Fantastic. I mean, so, you know, like 35 years, it goes by quick, right? And
yeah.
People go, man, why are you in that long? I'm like, well, I don't know what else to do. Man, I went to boot camp when I was 17. I turned 18 in boot camp, which I did not tell the drill instructors about. Thank God.
Smart man.
Yeah. So I'm still having fun, and quite frankly, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. Right. So, you know, I think in some aspects, right, that you look at what our paths have taken us, right? Like I would have expected to be where you were at your age, right? Out, going to school, trade, you know, learning stuff.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot harder decision to get out. I think there's a lot of comfort in the Marine Corps in terms of, all right, you got 3 hots in a cot, right? You get a paycheck. You may not know where you're going to be tomorrow, but you know you'll be getting paid for it, and you're going to be taken care of, right? And so, like, had I not been enlisted and gone officer, I would have had to retire a while ago. So it's just enabled me to serve the Marine Corps longer. And you know, when you look at, okay, what's ahead of me, I just want to continue to serve as long as I can, and whatever the Marine Corps needs me to do.
Yeah.
I don't know where else I can go to get paid to blow shit up and kill people that threaten our way of life. You know, I mean, that's what we're here for, to go do the nation's bidding when they need us to do it, and to be ready. And as long as the Marine Corps is going to have me, even if they need me to do windows in the Pentagon, I don't care. That's what you need, right? Like, so I'm still having fun. I'm still enjoying it, but ultimately, you know, to me, it's about using the rank that I have to take care of folks that don't have the rank.
I love that. That's a very, very poetic way of summing it all up, I think. I don't know if I could ask or add on to that any more than you did.
Yeah.
Yeah, was there anything? Yeah, because I think that's a good note we could wrap it up on, unless there's something else you wanted to ask or talk about, bring up, things like that.
So, you know, I'm looking at the phone here. You say you got one question for me at the end that you wrap up with.
Yes, I do. Yeah, don't. Yeah. So, yeah, the ending tradition we have. Everyone's gonna love to hear what you got to say. So, what's your advice to all of the boys that are still in? So, like all the sailors, the Marines that are listening. Most of them are going to be 2-8, so it might be tailored to them. But to just anyone listening now and in the future that's still in, what do you got to say to them?
Yeah. So, you know, we're in a meritocracy. We're in a rank-heavy organization, right? In other words, rank matters in this, right?
Yeah.
So your boss is important, no doubt about it, right? So, right, you know, don't cause friction for your boss. Don't surprise your boss, and your boss's priorities are your priorities, right? But your peers are more important than your boss, right? This isn't a game of one-upsmanship, right? You got to be a team player, right? But your Marines are more important than your peers. So, I mean, that's what you're there for, to take care of your Marines. So just keep that in mind, right? So do what's right. At the end of the day, we know what's right. Don't do the easy wrong thing. Do the hard right thing. Pays off over time, right? People will notice. You got to be a team player. Being a unit of substance beats perception every time, right? And by substance, it's you got to know and acknowledge where you're not as strong as you should be, and you got to have a plan to work for it. But if you try to sugarcoat it and you're paper deep, that's not effective. The Russians have found that out, you know. So every unit's got weaknesses. Yours is going to have them. You got to prioritize. I think I told you the Army did a study a number of years ago, and they said, okay, these are all the tasks: service-related, mandatory training, you know, sexual assault, MOS training, right? And what they found was there's not enough time in the year to accomplish all of the mandatory training. In other words, you can't be strong everywhere. You just got to decide where you're going to be, where you're going to accept risk, right?
Yeah.
Use your rank for those that don't have it. You've got it for a reason, and it's to lead and take care of others and make decisions and balance, right? you balance the requirements of the unit against how you take care of your people, and you find a balance. But don't let perfect be the enemy of good enough. Right.
Mm.
Right. Perfect plan executed tomorrow is nowhere near as good as a decent plan executed violently today.
Yes, sir.
If you get asked the question, just answer it honestly, right? You might be surprised what you get, right? Ask for it, right? I would walk around 2-8 all the time and say, how you doing? What do you need? How can I help? Right. And, people were like, well, I'm not going to tell him anything because I'll get in trouble or whatever. Like, no, it's about get out, inspect, find out what's going on. If you get asked the question by somebody, answer the damn question. It's easy. What are you going to do? Get yelled at because you identified a problem that needs to get fixed? Like, that's ridiculous to me. Right. So just, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask for stuff, right? You need something, ask for it. You want to take leave, ask for it. You might not get it, but it's not an emotional issue. Let folks say no and let them give you a rationale why. Hey man, I really need you at sea. Like, you can't go to the Bahamas. Like, we've had this training on the calendar. I'm sorry, man. Right. But, at the same time, we would, in 2-8, we would get Red Cross messages in, like, so-and-so's grandmother died. We got a few of them at YPG, at WTI. And while they didn't rate emergency leave, I gave the Marine the option, like, hey, I can't pay for this. I can't send you on emergency leave, because if you go on emergency leave, the government has the responsibility to get you back to your home unit, and then you can go from there. So I couldn't do that in some of these cases. And I said, look, I understand family is important. If you have the money to go to the funeral, whatever, you can go. I got no problem with that. And let's figure out the timing, whether you come back here and finish out WTI or whether you just go back to Lejeune. So, but don't be afraid to ask, to me, it's not emotional. So, two more pieces I would say, broad advice, get to school. In all my years in schools that I've gone to, like, being around my peers, I just learn a wealth from them. I've learned more from them in the school environment probably than I have in the classroom. And that's not an indictment of my instructors. It's just, you just learn a tremendous amount getting someone's perspective, feedback, talking through stuff, kicking around your brain with a peer. So get to school, because what happens is you come back from school, and what do you want to do? You want to teach everybody all the stuff you just learned.
Yeah.
So it helps, and read. Mattis, 5,000-year-old mind, right? Get in a book, read. It's just going to help your experience. You don't know what to do in a situation based on experience you've got. You probably read it somewhere, if you're a voracious reader. So broad advice, if there's specific situations, Marines can come up on the net and I'll give them my 2 cents. They may not want it. So, but if any of them do reach out, I'll give you my 2 cents.
Love to hear that. Well, yeah, I don't know where to begin to end it off. I kind of almost don't want to, but it's dude, it was a pleasure to have you on. It's great that I can finally get to see you as like a human being, as face to face, not as like the boss's boss a little bit. So it's Tom, Colonel Siverts, this was a pleasure. I couldn't have asked for more. This was amazing.
Yeah, man. No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. 2-8, right? I remember, so when I was in the 2-8 as a lieutenant, the whole like 2-8 calisthenics wasn't a thing, right? And I come back as lieutenant colonel, and they're like, I'm going out to PT on my own one day, and I hear this group go, all right, side saddles, hops, we will do 2-8 of them. And I was like, man, that is awesome. So that was great. But yeah, so 2-8, very, very fond memories, love all you guys. Just absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And from America's Battalion, we love you too, Colonel Siverts.
Yeah. Thanks, brother.
All right. Thank you. All right. Bye, everybody.